lives. We need to continue to support housing stability. And as we do that, we think about two things. One is racial and economic equity. And then how do we think about doing that in a way that we understand what's happening with our climate, with our environment? During COVID-19, we've changed up our focus to really say, how can we help people stay in their homes? This is so important, right? To stay housed. So we're working again with housing counseling agencies so that renters and homeowners facing financial challenges have a place to go, so that they can be supporting strategies other than evictions to help people work out situations in their communities. The housing challenges that our nation faces, really, they take a village, a country to solve. Let's get this message out that this is a solvable problem. We just have to be willing to put all of our energy and hard work in so that we can make a difference and make a home a reality for everyone in our country.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to our workshop, The Digital Divide, the Impact in Rural Areas and Communities of Color, brought to you by Wells Fargo. My name is Valerie Jenkins, Vice President and Senior Community Development Consultant with Wells Fargo, and I will be your moderator for today. Before we get started, here are a few housekeeping items. Everyone is muted upon entry, but you can always unmute yourself. We do encourage everyone to stay muted during the presentation to enhance sound quality and reduce feedback. The use of the cameras is up to you, but please be aware that with the large crowd such that we have today, we will not be able to see everyone. The chat room is enabled, and we will encourage you to use the chat room throughout the session. You may access the chat room by exiting the full screen mode and clicking at the bottom, the section at the bottom of your screen. Again, I will remind everyone to place themselves on mute so that we could avoid any background noise and also enhance the quality. We do ask that everyone be respectful of everyone on the call. Again, we have a lot of people joining today's call. This session is being recorded. So if you do not want to be recorded, you are welcome to exit the conference at this time. Again, the chat box is available. Please enter your questions in the chat box. We will monitor the box throughout the session. We will select several questions at the end of the session for the speakers to answer. So now that we've gotten all the rules out of the way, now let's get started. The COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated a long-standing problem in our communities. As more and more of our economy and education moves online, the people who need these resources the most are the least likely to have access. We invite you to join this conversation about the policies and economics behind the digital divide and what you can do in your community to fix it. Our speakers today, and I am really honored to be a part of such a great panel of speakers. Our first speaker today is Jaime-Lee. He's Senior Community Development Advisor for the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City. He leads efforts to narrow the digital divide across the bank's 7 state districts. Jeremy, thank you for being with us today. And I'll now turn the call over to you.
All right, thank you, Valerie. Give me just a second here and I will share my screen. It's amazing how this work from home position that many of us are in today has changed the way we communicate and changed the way we have meetings like this. And we, I must say, are the fortunate ones that are in positions where we have the luxury of being able to work from home. So I work in community development, as Valerie shared. These are my positions and my views that I've gained through my work at the Federal Reserve and working in community development. And over the last couple years, my focus has been on issues of digital equity and digital inclusion. And some folks might say, well, why this? You work at the Federal Reserve. Why is the Federal Reserve concerned about digital equity and digital inclusion? And I like this illustration. I didn't come up with this, but I found it, and I think it speaks really well to where we're at today. What I'm going to do in my presentation in the 12 minutes that I have to speak is provide a foundation for this conversation so that we understand how digital equity, digital inclusion, the digital divide has become a foundational underlying issue for so many of the topics of community development that we might deal with, and the importance of it, and provide some context and some clarity so that we can all better understand how this topic has become so foundational to the work that we do today. So first, digital equity is what is accomplished when everyone in our community, in our society, has access to affordable broadband at home, but that they also have a computer to utilize it and the skills to know how to do so. These things are all equally important. If you have 2 out of the 3, your stool won't be able to stand. So it's important to recognize when we talk about digital equity is reached when we have these things. Digital inclusion is efforts that we go about to achieve digital equity, and the divide is the difference between the haves and the have-nots. I'm going to share with you a few definitions to help frame the conversation. It's important to recognize that broadband, there's a minimum threshold of internet service that is needed to say that we are at broadband speeds. So not all internet service is at broadband speeds. The federal definition currently is 25 megabits per second download speed. So that's you consuming content off the internet. And minimum upload speeds of 3 megabits per second, which is you producing content or uploading content to the internet. Symmetrical speed is a term used when we talk about having speeds that have that upload and download speed equal. So this is important, especially when students are trying to upload homework from home, when parents or anyone else is trying to upload or produce content to share with others. Broadband availability, you might hear about this quite often. Broadband availability means it's there. If you live in a metropolitan area, chances are about 90 to 99, maybe even 100% of people have access to broadband availability. That doesn't mean that everybody is wired. That doesn't mean everybody is on and subscribing. That's broadband adoption. There's typically a pretty big difference between what the number of people that have broadband availability and the number of people that have actually subscribed. That difference is quite often a result of cost. So it may be there, but if it costs $140 a month, $100 a month, for many people, that makes it out of reach financially. So now I like to provide some context in terms of thinking about different broadband speeds. I happen to be a car person, and I think this analogy works quite well. If somebody has internet that's under 5 megabits per second, technically that's internet, just like technically this is a car. This is a car that you technically could get in and scoot around, but you better not be very tall. I'm 6'3", I couldn't fit in that car. And you're not gonna wanna take it out on the street. Technically, this is something where if you have one device, you can get online to surf the internet, but you're not gonna be able to upload large files. You're definitely not gonna wanna get in a race. 25.3, this is a current federal definition for what is considered broadband. And I think we're looking at a car similar to the smart car. This is something that you could scoot around town. You could even invite another person in with you. So maybe in the analogy, a second device. You can surf the web, email, social networking. You can do some moderate video streaming, but you're not going to be able to have on more than one device or maybe 2 devices. And this is where that symmetrical speed really becomes a hindrance. You see here the 25 megabits per second is your download, but if you want to produce content, so think about a family where the students are needing to upload their homework, turn in their assignments. Mom or dad are getting on a conference to do some video meetings like we're doing today, you're really going to get bogged down. You're not going to want to take this car across country, or you're not going to be able to get a lot of devices in it. This is where we want to go. We want to be able to have broadband speeds that are going to allow us to do not just what was important to do yesterday, not just what we need to do today, but is really positioned to get us to where we need to go tomorrow. As more and more people become connected, as we need to be more connected, be part of our society, we need to have broader capacity. We need to have a bigger broadband bus so that we can get all of our devices on. Your thermostat, I have 2 phones. I'm not the only person in my house connected. I need to have this so I can do what I need to do today. So let's talk about how COVID-19 has exacerbated the digital divide. We know the digital divide has been around for a long time. COVID didn't create it, but it definitely put it at the forefront of our society. I'm not telling any of you things that you don't know, but I want to give you some context so that when you talk to others about the digital divide, and you'll have a better, more fodder for that conversation to show the importance of addressing this for the work that you do. We know that digital divide has made it to where it's essential to having affordable internet and devices and the skills to utilize a device. When we look at who does and doesn't have both broadband and computers, here's a short version of the story, and it's not that uplifting and exciting. If you are in a rural community, if you are a person of color, and if you are in a lower income household, chances are you are going to be at a higher risk for not having affordable broadband and the devices needed to be able to do what you need to do in society. This is some information that recently came out from Pew on looking at broadband availability and computer access by race. And we can see here that people of color are much less likely to have both a computer and internet access at home. We know right now that we have a racial technology gap. We also know that lower income folks, and again, students of color, lower income students, are dropping out of college this fall at alarming rates. These are recent headlines. I actually had a conversation 2 weeks ago with a community college director who shared with me how personally hurt she was that they know that their college enrollment is down. It's down with lower income students because of the COVID pandemic and because of having to have remote learning, they had to stipulate that in order to register for classes, the students had to have internet access, they had to have a device, and they obviously had to be able to use those. And they had to make that as a prerequisite to be able to register for classes. She didn't want to do that, but it's just the way that our society is right now. And she was devastated by some of the stories that she knew of students that were not able to attend college. This headline on the right there, this young lady was excited in May when she became the first person in her family to attend college, and devastated when she had to drop out. So again, not warm and fuzzy, but this is the world that we live in, and we need to have a real conversation about what's going on. I want to share with you that there are some innovative stopgap measures that we are seeing, and some things that can give us hope. This is a single mom and this is a story from before COVID-19 struck, but in rural Oklahoma, there's a small library where it's the only source of free Wi-Fi in a town of about 3,000 people. It's also the only place where you can go to access a computer if you don't have one at home. This is a single mom. She's a professional working in the health field. She lives outside of town, and the only way that her child can get on the internet, the only way she can get on the internet is by checking out a free Wi-Fi hotspot from the local library. We know that there are initiatives across the country to help get lower income folks connected. Oftentimes, employers replace their computers in 3 to 5 year cycles. Those devices oftentimes become a cost burden for the employer. They have to pay somebody to decommission it, to destroy all the data that's on it. But what's really an innovative thing that we've latched onto at the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City is those devices, while they may be too old for and lack the memory and speed for a corporate environment, they are still perfectly suited for students and others to do homework or other things that we do in our personal lives. These are a couple of organizations that I found in Florida that recycle those computers. They refurbish them and then make them available to lower income folks at nominal rates. This is a concept that we at the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City have taken on the last couple years, where we donate a portion of our surplus computers to organizations such as those that you see here. If any of you have board members that work for larger employers, or work for a large employer yourself, this is something that is an immediate way that you can help narrow the digital divide. I'm trying to be respectful of my time here. Everyone on is an organization that does offer discount internet programs that's cost-based and helps others find lower income or discount-based, income-based discount programs. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen because I believe I've reached my time. I'll turn it back over to Valerie for the next speaker.
Well, thank you, Jeremy. Before I introduce my next speaker, I do want to remind everyone that the chat box option is available. So if you have any questions, please feel free to post your questions in the chat box. We will be monitoring the box throughout the session, and we'll be sure to address whatever questions we can with our guests. Thank you, Jeremy. Our next speaker is Santos Morales. He's Community Development, Economic Development Manager, or shall I say that he's been in the economic development field since 1998. And he's currently serving as the Director of Economic Prosperity at Enterprising Latinas in Waimama, Florida, which is a very small rural town outside of Tampa. So Santos, I'll turn the call over to you.
Thank you, Valerie, and good afternoon to everyone on the call, and thanks to Wells Fargo for sponsoring this event, this particular hour. I'm very happy to share with you some of the work that we at Enterprising Latinas are doing in the village of Waimama. For those of you that don't know about Waimama, we are about 30 miles south of Tampa. The city of Tampa in Florida. It's a rural community, and we are making big things there happen. I'm going to share my screen. Let's see. Let me see. Can you see it? Yes. Okay. Fantastic. And so again, my name is Santos, and I'm with Enterprising Latinas, and we created a year and a half ago, we went on this venture, thanks in part to our funder, Allegheny Franciscan Ministries. We saw an opportunity to help our low-income families in Waimama, who many of them have already shared with us that they did not have internet access, that it was too costly for many of them. If they were looking for a solution, you know, they were paying anywhere between $50 to $150 a month. And for a low-income family, you know, with 4 children, you know, it was a choice between paying, you know, $50 to $150 a month versus, you know, paying for groceries and other things in the house. So they opted not to have internet. When we started learning about our community, we began to see some of the need and decided to act to create a solution. And that's what we created, Waimama Connect. It's a free internet service in Waimama Village. So Enterprising Latinas is a women's empowerment organization and with a mission to create new pathways of economic opportunity for Hispanic women in Tampa Bay. We do this work by creating networks of mutual support for women to accomplish their personal and economic goals. We also do this by teaching new skills and offering new tools that lead to entrepreneurial careers and workforce opportunities. And also we do advocacy for innovative services and public solutions that promote economic security and social equity, such as the Waimama Connects program that you're gonna hear about. So a little bit about Waimama, for those of you that don't know, it's a small little town, again, about 30 miles south of Tampa, with a population of approximately 6,400 people in a 25 square mile rural area. 38% are under 18, 76% of the population is Latino. And worth noting is 29% of the population in Waimama is on the poverty rate. 56% only have high school diplomas or GEDs, and only 6% of the population in Waimama have a bachelor's degree. Something that is noteworthy is the 31% of residents don't have internet access or an internet connection. In comparison to other places, the per capita income in Waimama is $14,912. So as you can imagine, spending $50 to $150 on internet, it's a big decision for many of these families. So what we did is, to help close the digital gap in Waimama, Enterprising Latina created the Waimama Connects program. Basically, the Waimama Connects program is a network of wireless antennas that create a mesh of access points in the downtown area of Waimama. In that area, businesses and community residents living near that target area have access to the internet 24 hours a day for free. And Waimama residents and visitors can enjoy the Wi-Fi service while having dinner at any of the 7, now 9 restaurants in the growing downtown area. We have also installed antennas inside 2 low-income residential communities. One of them is called the Groves at Waimama, and the other one is called La Estancia. And within these 2 communities, there are over 100 families in each, many of these families who are farmers. All together, with all the network of antennas that we have in Waimama, over 400 families have access to the Waimama Connects network. So Jeremy was speaking about the benefits, right? And I saw the bus, and we like to think that we are creating that bus, right, for our community, so that they can access. What can they access? Things that we sometimes take for granted, right? Because we're all connected. Job seekers can apply for employment opportunities. Parents can help their children with school homework, and children can do online research. Students are connected to their virtual classrooms during the pandemic. Excuse me. Families can stay in touch with friends and other family members near and far. And users, of course, have access to email, online shopping experiences. They can pay bills online, browse for community services, make doctor's appointments, and much more. Again, these are the things that you and I take for granted. We do this all the time, but many of the families in Waimama did not have access to. In doing so, in creating this network of mesh points and antennas throughout Waimama, we also created a website called WaimamaConnects.org. And that website we have been using ever since COVID hit in March. We have been using that website also as a way to get the community involved and share information about food pantries and all the nonprofit and community resources with the area. And the idea is basically, if you, as a resident of Waimama, you're near the antenna, so you live near the antenna, so you're visiting one of the establishments, you basically get your phone on your tablet, you look for the Wi-Fi signal, Waimama Connects, and then that will take you to our Waimama Connects. Once you connect on the Wi-Fi, it will take you to waimamaconnects.org, where you can see all of this information. So this is a great resource for the community all around. And this here, just want to share with you, in the last 90 days, just so that you see the type of impact that this is having. In the last 90 days, we've had on the phase one, which is the ones here on the bottom. This is where the business commercial corridor at the bottom. On the phase one, we have had an average of 226 daily users. On phase two, which is where the communities of La Estancia and the Grove, this is where large pockets of families live, we have had an average of 236 daily users. And that makes about 462 daily users combined with these two, within these two areas. And the next phase for us is really, as you can see, these large yellow circles will be to continue to expand on that network in the downtown. This is considered the downtown area of Waimama. And we're planning to expand. There's around this circle here towards the west, there's probably about 100 other families. The circle to the north here, there's probably another 100, 150 families. And the circle towards the bottom, there's probably another 75 to 100 family within that area. And so for us, we're trying to build the bus that Jeremy showed you on that slide to create the access and the opportunity for families that cannot afford it. We are working closely with Hillsborough County government to use their parks and recreation and facilities to expand the network. And we've also been working with the support of Spectrum, who actually services this antenna. We do pay a fee for all of this service, but we are very glad, that we are able to do this in our community and provide a much needed service all around. I think this is the end of my presentation. Yep, so I'm gonna leave it up to here and let's see, stop sharing. There we go. And any questions I'll be able to answer. Thank you.
Great, well, thank you, Santos. I really enjoyed hearing about how you're making it work. So thank you for sharing that with us. And again, we have some questions in the chat box, but I'm going to reserve those for the end of the call. And so I want those that have entered questions to know that we are aware, and we're going to make sure that we address those questions at the end. My very next speaker is Scott Hansel. Scott joins us from the Partners of South Florida as Chief Executive Officer. Scott has a unique expertise in both building and leading organizations. And so, Scott, I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Okay, great. Thank you so much to the Florida Alliance and also Wells Fargo for sponsoring this. Great presentation, Santos. Enjoyed that. So I think as a CEO of an organization, and I'm going to give you a little bit of context. Jamie, if you can go down to the next, really to the, yeah, so we're going to talk a little bit about digital equity. Just setting the table for change and what it takes, if you can just put all the ones up. So I think the CEO of an organization has really, in my mind, two major functions. One is casting a vision, and two is really kind of creating the environment, the financial, operational, and cultural environment to be ready to adapt and change and be nimble when opportunities occur. And we've certainly seen that. Our organization last year was in the middle, or really kind of starting a new phase of our strategic plan. We were looking at not moving away, but kind of a both-and approach to not just programmatic addressing symptoms of our challenges in our communities, but looking at systems and how systems are obstructions and obstacles to achieving what we want to achieve. And so we made a decision to really to move to these systems that we had to have a different way to approach it. and to really kind of, instead of just working in our business, really kind of create an opportunity to work on it in a broader way. So we are in West Palm Beach, Florida, kind of urban area. We have three areas of focus: housing and financial empowerment, mental health services, and then community engagement. Jamie Bradshaw, who we'll talk in just a second, was our vice president of community services. We promoted her back in the fall as part of our strategic plan to start to address these systems, both internally, making sure that we were prepared to do that, but also looking at what our opportunities were externally. Jamie had also had a major national presence with NeighborWorks America as part of an equity journey, and we really kind of looked at equity as being the overarching thread that really impacts everything that we do as a community development organization. In order to be able to do that, we have to look at things with an equity lens. And so we made that commitment to move her from the vice president's role to the strategic initiatives officer role. And then boom, in February, March, COVID hit and everything changed for us. We had to go 100% remote, all 250 employees. We had to figure out ways to attach to our clients on the housing side, to go to telehealth and remote for our mental health services, and then figure out a way to stay connected and engaged to our community-based clients. So Jamie kind of led the effort to do a broad needs assessment of our clients and our staff, which look very much the same. On any given day, we're servicing about 3,000 to 4,000 clients as part of our service portfolio. So we did a very comprehensive assessment. We found that, and we gathered this data from that assessment to be able to inform us as to what we needed to do for our clients. And from that, we found a lot of basic needs, but the digital divide was very clear. And a lot of we work with a lot of families and children, and we had a lot of families that the school district tried to help them with laptops or whatever they needed, but in many cases had 4 kids trying to share a laptop. I think Jeremy pointed that out real clearly, some of those issues. 4 kids trying to find, with no internet access. Even though we're in an urban area, there were many pockets that didn't have mesh internet. It didn't have a way to access. And we had probably, in most of our communities that we serve, there were probably 35 to 40% of the children that never logged on to the internet from March till May. We also found that a lot of our mental health clients could not access the internet. So that was kind of, we had that story to tell. The fourth part of this, and I'm hurrying because I know Jamie's going to spend most of the time talking about how we did it. But we'd also spent a lot of time talking about our intent and our vision to be systems leaders. And I've been on 3 years, and I've that 3 years, that's pretty much all I've talked about is making that shift. And it put us in a position to be invited to the table. I was invited to the table of a group of our business development board, our economic council, and our chamber had put together an infrastructure group to look at what's happening in the community, what needs to be done. Most of it was around basic needs. And at the end of the conversation, I brought up our data. I brought up the data about the digital equity challenges, and the school district was on the call, and they just talked about giving every student a laptop. But our data kind of shifted things, and I think it made them realize that there was a bigger problem than they thought, and they knew that there wasn't enough resources to address that. So that then led to the people just being at the table and have kind of building that muscle, put us in a position. And we're not, obviously, digital access was not really part of our service portfolio. It was just kind of something that we fell into because we had already positioned ourselves to be systems leaders. And then we had a broad footprint throughout the county. So long story short, we are now engaged in a digital equity divide pilot or initiative that's being funded for 2 years by one of our major foundations. And I'm gonna let Jamie talk a little bit about what that is. But I guess just the point I want to make is it really does take a lot of effort and time and work to put yourself in a position to be a systems change partner. Jamie.
Thank you, Scott. So hi, everyone, I'm Jamie. And to give a little context, because we just went from Waimama, hi, Santos, I remember, the CLI, to kind of this very a high populated area. So in Palm Beach County, we're 1.6 million people. We have one school district that houses 180 schools and 176,724 children. Palm Beach County, we go from the island of Palm Beach, or the Winter White House, or all the way to South Bay. And so we've got a per capita median income of sometimes $74,000, but then we have some income in South Bay that's $6,000 per person. So we have a lot of diversity, disparity in our county, and just wanted to set the tone a little bit more for what I'm about to talk about. And I want to thank Jeremy for those 3 definitions of digital equity, inclusion, and the divide. So we really highlighted the divide that's existing. And I mean, we have some numbers. Ours aren't as large as Santos is. We are about 17% of our households in a county this big have no broadband access. That's 92,600 households. So that's a lot of households. And the group that has the least access are Black households with 23% of a lack of access. Our Hispanic households or Latinx households are at 18%, and our white households are at 10%. So just giving a little bit more there. I'm going to move on to really how a systems response. So again, Jeremy talked about equity is the 3-legged stool. And it's so funny, I'm already in love with Jeremy because he can see these 3 areas that we kind of didn't know you were going to talk about, but it's really awesome. When he talked about just the different needs for everything to work, to sit well. And then he talked about inclusion being the effort, which I love, because we actually, the efforts are the strategies to mitigate this divide. So the Health Foundation, it's actually a health foundation that funded us because they're trying to create improved access. And so they saw that this internet and whole digital equity issue was really impacting residents' ability to access every service, because we know the social determinants of health impact everything. So a lack of internet impacted your ability to get to your doctor's appointment or access that doctor's appointment, education, apply for housing support, et cetera. And so they saw this as an opportunity to make some systems changes. So I'll start from the individual level. We understand with 1.6 million people that we cannot do all for everyone. While we're a large nonprofit, we just can't. And again, our school district is very big, and they've been making some amazing efforts at not only ensuring that individual children have access to Chromebooks, but also that they're working on an internet solution. They've committed about $45 million in between short-term internet solutions, Wi-Fi hotspots, internet subscriptions, and Chromebooks. So that's quite a lot of money that they've done. So when we talk about the missing middle or the gap individuals, we're looking at tech vulnerable households. And it's like, what's a tech vulnerable household? So we might have said that that was a family that didn't have access to internet or a Chromebook. And maybe those were families of color or families in impoverished areas. Well, now in the COVID area, those are not households with young children in it or children in high school, because the school district has done, their best effort in making sure that those households are okay. So when we think about this strategy about getting Chromebooks and MiFi hotspots into tech vulnerable homes, those are homes without children. So those are single households. Those are households with veterans, with seniors who still have to keep up with their regular doctor's appointments, but don't have the technology or the skill or the broadband that Jeremy talked about to be able to keep up in this world. So that's our individual level. When we talk about fish and lake work, if you know that, this is how we're feeding fish. We're getting technology and broadband into the hands of individuals. The neighborhood level is what Jeremy was talking about, the skills to use it. We have, I don't even know how many Chromebooks we've deployed, but we definitely know how many, despite getting it, can't use it. And so they don't have, they don't know, how do I turn it on? Where's the charger plug and all of that? And so this foundation identified the need to have community technology navigators that would receive referrals from schools, health providers, housing authority, whoever it is, self-refer yourself, and we would deploy those community technology navigators into the community to be able to do one-on-one tutoring, tutorials, troubleshooting, education with those individuals or families. And then finally, again, that systems perspective. So we provided individual things to people in households, and then and this is the community tech navigator is going to start in 3 areas. So rural glades, we're going to do Riviera Beach, which is home base to where we are, and then West Palm Beach, which is our largest city in the county. So that's kind of our neighborhood / community level. And then the final level is this systems perspective. So overall county investment, I mean, we've got about $1 million between our education foundation, United Way, local nonprofits, about $21 million from Palm Beach County to expand the internet infrastructure. You heard about the $35 million commitment from the school district, another $550,000 from just other caring individuals and companies, but yet we have no alignment between all of those different things happening. So we've got mesh going on here, on top of MiFi here, on top of this, and this internet provider won't go here and there. So they asked us to hire a digital inclusion director that would really monitor all of the various efforts and move to more of a collective impact or aligned way of looking at this, where everyone can be informed. So we're not trying to duplicate anything. There's a lot of money going into this. It's not about a lack of interest. It's about really just aligning all of the efforts that are being funded to have a positive impact on not only individuals, but communities, neighborhoods, and the system overall. So that is all we had. And we really invite you to put any questions that you have. Again, unsung hero throughout this pandemic really are your health foundations. We have seen some major investments coming from them when it comes to access and how they define access. And so thank you so much, everyone, for listening.
Wow, Jamie and Scott, thank you so much. Wow, I really enjoyed the community connectivity. And so I have to commend Terry for doing a great job in pulling this panel together, because it was amazing how all of that connects. And so what I want to do now is move into the chat room. There's a question in the chat room. Okay, I was just there. Great. Jeremy, I'm going to start off with you. And the reason why is because I had the opportunity of listening to your podcast. And so you really talked about what's happened as far as our infrastructure and how some of that is really important. So I'm going to start with you with this first question. The question from the chat is from Jackie Eddy, and she says here, is there currently infrastructure for everyone in our country to have the bus version of the internet? So I'm going to start with you, and then I will invite other individuals on the panel to please chime in.
Sure. Thanks for that. That's a really great question. The short answer is no. You may have heard of many states with the CARES Act funding. Many states are putting some of the CARES Act funding they've received to investing in building out infrastructure. And when that happens, typically those dollars then go to internet service providers to subsidize their costs to build things out. We've been doing that for decades, and we still haven't achieved that equity. And so there's a lot more to be done there. We should celebrate the large investments that are going into infrastructure deployment, but we're not there. And it's also important to recognize, with that bus, one of the values of having that bus is it's somewhat future-proof. When DSL came out, you all may remember the Roadrunner, and it was running super fast. It was blazing fast. That's no longer, that doesn't get us up to broadband speeds. So that technology is antiquated. We need to ensure that our dollars are being spent as effectively as possible. These are my views. And that means we need to do what we can to make sure that we are investing in tomorrow's technology, which is fiber to the home in most cases. We also need to recognize that you're going to hear, I'm sure you probably have already heard about 5G, and it's going to save the world. It is going to allow us to go a lot faster. That's also going to, we've not seen any reason to make me believe that the business models have changed with that. So in other words, the infrastructure tends to go where there's profit, and that doesn't tend to be rural America, and it also doesn't tend to be low-income communities.
Wow. Thank you, Jeremy. Anyone else? Scott or Santos? Jamie as well?
I mean, I echo what Jeremy was talking about. This we're nowhere near that, and I don't think, I mean, that would be the ideal. One of the things why we started this network in Waimama a year and a half ago is for the same reason. Is the cost to bring internet and broadband and all of this from the internet service providers perspective, it's extremely high, and they won't take a chance. One of our residents in Waimama said to me, I was giving a quote, of a few $1,000s to have internet, and told I needed to wait 6 months before I get it. So, every community, I think, and every leader, such as the panelists here, if we have the opportunity to bring internet access, that's what we're doing, and really for us in Waimama, because Waimama is sort of like on the peak of development, we're seeing an opportunity also to create the fiber optic network now, so that we can create a network Wi-Fi using that solution, in an area where you have a house here and then another house 3 miles down the road. But it is a challenge. It's definitely a challenge.
Okay, great. Jamie, as it relates to internet providers, how are they involved in helping with access to internet services, or are they, or can they do that?
So this is being recorded, so I will be mindful. I think that they're a business, they're a for-profit business. And I think they are, while they may have a heart for service or providing service, they also have a bottom line to protect. So what we've noticed, how about I talk about that? What we've noticed is that despite the internet essentials and all of these programs that, ours in Palm Beach County is Comcast or Xfinity, while they're trying to work with our school districts and our local taxing districts or Children's Services Council, which some of the counties in Florida have, there are some hurdles that come along with that as well. So especially in rural, Santos talked exactly about that. There are pockets of the glades where they will not enter. Not that they can't enter, they will not enter because there's no ROI for them out there. It's not worth it. And then in the more concentrated pockets of communities of color, it's not about an access to the service, it's access to service, mostly because of old bills. They run your credit score, even though we're told they don't, but they are. And that we know that when you're in folks of color coming up, when you're just trying to survive and you need something, sometimes people take service out in your children's social security number to get access because you need it, right? So we're finding that some adults these days can't get access because of, something that, an account that was taken out in their name when they were 5. And so trying to overcome that, you can't get service if that's the case. So it's where sometimes, even though you can get it for free or $9.99 a month, they would have to pay thousands of dollars in back like bills to become current. to take advantage of that. And then if sometimes I don't know how to answer that question well. I think there are some strategies that they're trying, but those strategies lead to additional barriers that we're trying to help actually remove for people. And so we respect what's going on, but we're also trying to try different strategies when we think about internet as a public utility and something that's available for all versus a subscription.
Wow, well, thank you. And I know, Santos, you've been very creative, right? With the towers and some other things you've been able to create. Share with us how you were able to negotiate or involve some of the internet companies in bringing that particular initiative to bear.
Well, there are specific guidelines for sharing and not sharing the internet connection, right? One thing that is clear in our area is we pay for the service. Mm-hmm. So, we are paying Spectrum over $9,000 a year in service alone. And we had a discussion with Spectrum about this because, again, there is a gray area when it comes to sharing. And so, I specifically reminded them, I'm paying you first, I'm paying you for this service. But I also stressed the community efforts and the community need in light of COVID, and how much this was a need. We started a year and a half ago, and really we started because the business community in the downtown area of Waimama, many of them did not have internet access, surprisingly. They were using the little app that you plug to your phone, and and that's how they were charging, and I was just baffled by that. And but we used and worked with the business community because we knew it was sort of like low-hanging fruit. A lot of the community go there to eat, and they order, and they patronize those businesses. And we knew it was important for us to be able to brand ourselves and get recognition with the community so that we can move forward with a larger strategy. And when COVID hit, it was interesting that, we were already providing a solution for our community, not as expanded as we wanted to, but at least we were doing that. And the county approached us, and of course Spectrum approached us, and we sort of got together and talked about the need. This is a real issue, and this is something that there's data to back up the digital divide and around healthcare, especially and access to your doctor, and access to your teacher, and access to education. This is not an argument. This is a reality, and for people of color and low-income individuals, this is a struggle. And we saw ourselves at Enterprising Latinas as part of that solution. And that's why we came with these folks to the table with Spectrum and with the county and all the business community, so that we could really address the need from a community perspective. In creating that buzz that Jeremy referenced in his slide, because it's here to stay. This is not going to go away, even after COVID. And I'm not sure who was it that said it at the beginning. COVID highlighted this need. It just it's going to stay here, and I think we see ourselves as creators of a network that really provides people options. Because just like when you buy a house in a community, right, a planned unit development, you get basic internet service with your house, right? That the homeowners association, they buy a package from the internet service provider, and then they basically source out that package to all of the homes in the area. We want to be able to do that for our low-income families and our children in the community.
Santos, thank you for that, because during your earlier presentation, I wanted individuals to know that oftentimes there's a cost, there's a strategy around all of this. You all made it seem really easy. And so I just commend Scott for having the foresight to say, I do need a strategist that can really help us navigate through that process to really bridge this gap. And so thank you for highlighting the efforts that it really took in order to bring this to your community. What I want to do is, because we have about 5 minutes, what I like the moderators, what should be our next step? What should be our call to action? So Jeremy, I'll start with you and followed by Santos and then Scott and then Jaime-Lee.
That's a great question. I think each of us, work from different angles and different perspectives. We each have different tools in our toolbox. And I think fundamentally, we all should examine what it is that our ultimate goals are with our work, our initiatives, and think of how digital equity plays into that. And so if it's a financial institution, thinking of how digital equity can be integrated into that bank's CRA strategy. If it's a foundation, how digital equity could be integrated in that strategy. An example that I have on that front, recently the state of Kansas just announced last week some funding, deploying some of their CARES Act funding to support broadband, like many states are doing. That required that each of the service providers receiving those funds get their own matching funds. Well, in Kansas, there is a community foundation that made a low interest loan, community impact investing. They made a low interest loan, to a service provider to deploy broadband in their county. And that partnered with the health foundation for the state and a small business entity within the state. They each recognized that role that digital equity plays in their health mission, their community mission, their small business mission. So the answer is going to be different for each of us, but it's really looking at how digital equity aligns with our respective goals and what pieces, what angles we can take towards that.
And I agree. Every organization needs to assess, that their goals and that, identify what that call to action. I think for Enterprise in Latinas, we're in to create pathways of economic opportunity for women and families. We believe that when women do good and the children do better, the community prospers. And so that has been our motto and our philosophy. For us, our call to action continues to be to empower families. And maybe that means creating additional businesses that they can take on, maybe creating some sort of telecommunication company, at the start, something that we can help become part of the solution on the long run. And not just, a Band-Aid, to start. So we are keeping our minds open and creatively thinking about how do we address this. So our call to action is a script. It continues to be written.
So I thought a lot about this. I think it's a combination of data and narrative. So it's not just data, because data is very, data is great, but it doesn't strike the emotional chord that gets people moving. So I think it's all about taking the data and using it to tell a story and figuring out how to make that story relevant to whatever audience you're talking to, so that they see it's important to them, not necessarily to the to the greater good, because people don't move until they see it is important to them personally. And I think that's really the key to this.
And I'll just close out by saying that keep equity at the forefront. That's my action plan. NeighborWorks, again, Scott said we're part of the Race Equity, Diversity and Inclusion cohort, where they've provided us an equity lens document that no matter what we do, from strategic plan to program to sunsetting to go, no go policies, we need to continue to butt things up against that equity lens to identify who are the victims, who's suffering because of this move, and are we thinking about the impact, not intentional impact, but that it's going to have on them. And if we continue to put we over me, then I think that just as a society, we'll be doing a lot better.
Great. Hi, I do apologize. That's technology at its best. I lost connectivity. But I do want to thank everyone for joining today's webinar. And also I want you to be mindful to empower families, take a look at the data, keep equity in mind as we're moving forward, because we all need everyone's support as part of these efforts to really reduce that digital divide. And so I thank you all for joining today's webinar. And I think that is the conclusion of today's event. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks so much.